welcome to City Connections. I'm Steve Kime with the City of Enid. Thank you for joining us. And as you know, I have the opportunity to visit with Miss Oklahoma, runner-up Miss America, Miss Rodeo, all kinds of dignitaries, and I have a very, very special guest. And I always admire our men and women that serve our country and give a lot of their life really for our protection, if you will. But my special guest today is Colonel Christopher Daniels from right here at Vance Air Force Base in Enid, Oklahoma. Colonel, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
You are one busy guy, and I think when we talked about being on the show, I was like 93rd on your list of things to do, so we finally got moved up to the top. So welcome to City Connections, and appreciate your service to our country, and thank you for being here today. For our viewing audience, they're familiar with Vance. It's south of town. We see planes all the time, but not necessarily everybody knows about the relationship between Vance Air Force Base and the city of Enid. Mm-hmm. From your perspective as a commander, what kind of relationship exists?
That's a fantastic relationship we have with the city. You know, I've been at many, many installations, and this is the best relationship I've seen. The city of Enid has done a phenomenal job to work with the base to ensure we have the tools and resources that we need to get our mission complete, as well as the local community supports our families and our airmen with young families. And that's a big win for us. And it's very, very evident that Enid appreciates the base and appreciates our mission out there. Many, many years ago, the city of Enid sold that land to the military for $1. And I think that says it all as far as commitment.
And then we tried to buy it the next day for $2 and it didn't work at all. And you said it's the best relationship. Why do you think that's the case? Is it just the people that makes that relationship so special?
Absolutely. I think it's a community commitment, and in so many installations, even though you might have a base inside of a city limit, sometimes that relationship may not be as proactive or as engaging. But here, the city is very engaging. The mayor, the city manager are always out on the base, working with us, asking us what we need. And I think it's very evident because our families, when they come to Enid and they come to Vance Air Force Base, they feel that sense of community immediately.
Our special guest today on City Connections is Colonel Christopher Daniels here at Air Force Base, or Vance Air Force Base here in Enid, Oklahoma. And Colonel, for those who have not visited the base, because it is kind of off limits, there is security, it's not necessarily it's just not on everybody's place to go. But how would you explain what an individual would find there at Vance Air Force Base?
Vance Air Force Base is just like the city of Enid. It's a small town within gates with security forces guards there at the front. However, we offer homes for people to live in. We have fitness centers. We have playgrounds for our children. We have places to eat, places to shop. So it is one city within that fence line. I, as the Mission Support Group Commander, I'm very much like a city manager. So in charge of security forces, fire department, civil engineering, all the public works, infrastructure that goes along with supporting that installation, I'm part of. And when people enter those gates, that's what they see. And we do offer public tours if people would like to get out to take a look at the base from time to time, windshield tours. Just contact our public affairs office at www.vance.af.mil, and you can set up an appointment to come out and visit the installation.
Well, I want to compliment you on your dress today, because if you're comparing yourself to a city manager, you're one of the best dressed city managers that I've seen in some time. No reflection on our current Enid city manager. Again, appreciate the insight and what you would find out there at Vance, again, another community. But if people are wondering, where does Vance fit in? Now, they understand that they're training pilots, it's a mission support group. That may make sense to some individuals, but in the overall scheme of things, in regard to the military and also the Air Force, what role does Vance Air Force play?
Yeah, well, we are the 71st Flying Training Wing, and the intent of the base and the reason the base exists is to train pilots. We produce about 338 pilots each year, and once they complete their training, which is about 1 year of training for all of our folks that go through the program, they enter different phases of aircraft training beyond Vance Air Force Base. So we are producing pilots for our nation's defense, as well as the aircraft that we have in our Air Force inventory.
Speaking of the aircraft inventory, 338 pilots annually, is it one particular plane, or is there several planes that they are exposed to in their training here at Vance?
There are 3 platforms that we have there at Vance.
Okay.
The first phase of training, they start off in a T6. It's a basic fundamental aircraft where they learn instrumental and other types of nav aid training in that aircraft before they branch off into what we call their platform training. It's a two-phase training program, so once they complete the basic T6 program, they either go into the T38 training portion of the program or the T1 training portion of the program.
Okay.
T38s typically produce fighter and bomber pilots. T1s produce cargo airlift pilots.
Okay. It's interesting. You know, I've lived in California just a brief time and in other states just a brief time. But when people think of Oklahoma, Tinker comes to mind, Altus comes to mind, and also Vance.
Yes.
There always seems to be a connection. And I think if you're ever coming through Vance, undoubtedly it's because you were one of these training pilots.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah, as part of the Air Education and Training Command, you know, we are one of a couple of bases that produce pilots, and Vance is a very unique mission. I will brag about the installation itself and our training program. We are the only undergraduate pilot training program that has graduated all of its pilots on time.
yeah, very impressive. Well, I always try to attempt to be very thorough in my homework and do my research and read bios of our special guests and stuff. And I've noticed you've written several pieces. You've served in different stations around the country, around the globe. But on a personal level, why did you choose the Air Force? You've got this distinguished career, but something that sometimes said, you know, Air Force is for me.
Well, growing up, my father was an aircraft mechanic, and he would always bring home pictures of aircraft and talk about the parts and you know how they work, and that sparked an interest for me and my younger brother, who actually retired from the Navy. And so with that in mind, as I went off to college, at the time, the Air National Guard was offering a GI Bill benefit program to help offset and supplement college tuition. So I thought that would be a great way to serve my nation, but at the same time, help pay for college. So once I joined the Air National Guard, and I served in the Guard for 3 years and 26 days, once I was serving in the Guard and I started college, I realized that ROTC was a valuable option. I thought it was something that I should get into and explore, because I enjoyed wearing the uniform as an enlisted airman. Joined ROTC while I was at Florida A&M University, and I joined ROTC at Florida State University. And once I wore the uniform in ROTC for about 2 years, I said, this is it. I'm hooked. I would like to join the Air Force and make it a career. So after graduating from college, I came into the Air Force as a second lieutenant.
And you've been in the Air Force now 20, how many years? 20?
About 24 years. 24
years. And it probably all seems like 5 years, right?
It does.
It's been a blur.
It goes by really fast.
Thank you for joining us today on City Connections. My special guest is Colonel Christopher Daniels from Vance Air Force Base right here in Enid, Oklahoma. We'll have more with the Colonel right after this. He's written several pieces and has been published. And we want to talk about one of those articles right after this. Welcome back to City Connections, and also welcome back to our Enid Television Network studios. As you can see my special guest, Colonel Christopher Daniels from Vance Air Force Base right here in Enid, Oklahoma. And what do you think of our American flag behind us?
I love it. Very impressive.
Very impressive. As I've always tell people, I'm one of those flag-waving Americans. I always like to have the flag out at my home and different places, and it's a great backdrop here at Enid Television Network. In reading your bio, Colonel, I noticed that you had written 3 or 4 pieces, maybe more, that have been published. And one of the articles that got my attention, it was entitled Leading from the Front, Rear, and Center. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that piece?
Well, I was, my first command was at Shaw Air Force Base as a major back from 2003 to 2005. And after that experience, I went off to Air Command and Staff College. And while serving at Air Command and Staff College, one of our assignments was to write a piece to be published.
Okay.
And I leaned on my experience as a first-time squadron commander at Shaw Air Force Base to sum up what I thought was important as a commander. And we always talk about leading from the front, but I found as a commander that you also need to lead from the rear and the center, because you have a really good ideal and it helps you encompass the holistic approach to leadership, understanding what the needs are of your folks, understanding what it takes to complete your mission, and understanding your purpose and why your mission exists.
Yeah, oftentimes when you talk about leadership, it's always from the front, but here you're talking about leading from the rear. Can you kind of give us an example, not to put you on the spot, but I know you're polished enough to respond to this, but for someone who is watching, said, leading from the rear, I'd like to know a little bit more about that. Can you expand upon that thought?
Absolutely. My personal leadership vision is that you need to have an ideal of what's taking place in your unit at all times. And from the sight of visual perspective, when you're leading from the front, you're seeing what's ahead of you, but what's behind you, what's taking place in the back. Have a good idea of what's happening there, because a lot of times you get a sense of issues or problems or things that you may not be aware of, because you now understand what's happening behind you, and you're getting a good sense of direction because you're getting a good feel for the entire unit, and not just necessarily marching toward a goal that you have set for the command, but how do we get all of our people to that goal? Very
good. And again, the literary piece that the Colonel is referring to is leading from the front, rear, and center. So thank you very much for sharing about that. Colonel, I won't say I'm a big Winston Churchill fan, but I've read various things about Mr. Churchill, and I remember this one piece that when the bombs were dropping on London during World War II, and they had asked, are you concerned about what's going to be happening? You know, here the bombs are just dropping every night. And Winston Churchill's response, he goes, I've been preparing all my life for this moment. And I really took that quote to heart. And I think in my own personal and professional career, it's like I have been preparing all my life for today, right, kind of deal. Now, I know you've been stationed in Bosnia, you've been around the globe stationed. How do all those experiences prepare you for being commander today?
Well, my career has been a series of building blocks, and from day one as a second lieutenant to now, every assignment, every opportunity has created another opportunity to have me here sitting with you today. As a group commander in the United States Air Force, it's a huge responsibility, and along the way the Air Force keeps throwing little things out at you just to see how far you can go.
I see.
And each challenge, you try to rise to it, you try to rise to the occasion, and do the very best you can in hopes that the Air Force and the bosses that you work for are very pleased with your performance. And the folks that you are leading are also very happy with your performance. So things lead into other things, and then ultimately you end up here. But I have to say, each experience that I've had in the Air Force has prepared me for the next experience. And when folks are promoted in the Air Force, there's a common saying, you know, we're not promoting you because you earned this promotion. We're promoting you because of the potential to serve in the next higher grade.
Well, I had the privilege of meeting you for the first time a few months ago, and from that very first impression, I thought, you know, I'd really like to learn more about this guy. And that's what I said about this guy. I didn't say this colonel, but I said this guy, because I thought, you know, he's well-spoken, very articulate, but he looks like he has a wealth of information. So I just really appreciate you being on City Connections today. And again, thank you for joining us on City Connections. I could talk with the colonel pretty much all day, but the guy is very busy, and we all are busy, but he's extra busy, and so we've got time for one more question. And Colonel, my question, and you can address the camera on this as well, there's a young person that is watching this interview, and maybe they're on the fence. Career-wise, do they go to school? Do they work? Do they join the Marines? Do they go Air Force or whatever? But if you would, just take a moment and speak to that young person who's considering serving in the military, and what advice would you give them?
All right. Well, to the young person watching this show today, if you have a knack or you want to find that sense of purpose, consider the military as a way. The Air Force for me is a great way of life. It's provided for me and my family. You're going to learn skills and take training away that you probably can't find many other places. The Air Force is also a community. It's a community of airmen, a community of professionals, of people that are very dedicated to our mission and dedicated to protecting the defense of our country. It's important to understand as a young member, a young person, that if you're looking for the direction in life, the military is a great way of life. It's a way that you can certainly get that sense of training as well as professional existence, and also making yourself proud. And putting this uniform on every day is a great way to do that. So consider it, and I think you will find that it will be very, very fulfilling and satisfying.
Very good, and well said. Well, Colonel, thank you again for being here. I realize you have a very hectic schedule. Thank you for moving us up from 93 on your to-do list to number 1 today. And I just want to say thank you very much for your service to this country, and on behalf of the City of Enid, we appreciate your leadership at Vance, and also just the partnership. And I know that the previous city manager and the current city manager just appreciate you and what you do, and for what everybody does at Vance Air Force Base. So we just want to say a big thank you.
Thank you, and thank you to the City of Enid, and thank you for my coin. I appreciate that very much.
You're welcome. And thank you for joining us on City Connections. I look forward again to having a special guest. It's a real treat to get a little bit more inside of what our special guests are all about, and especially these individuals that serve our country in many facets. Thank you for joining us. I'm Steve Kime with the City of Enid. I look forward to having another guest in the near future. Until then, make it a great day.